HTTV in association with Absolute Warehouse Services. Mark, thank you for joining us. You've been here as interim chief executive since January. Obviously now we're delighted to announce you as our permanent chief executive. How have you settled in during your time at Huddersfield Town?
I've really enjoyed it. I came in the middle of January. I think I've said previously in a couple of interviews, the club is bigger than I anticipated. Number of season ticket holders, number of staff, particularly over at Canal Side, and you can see what a great setup is in progress over at the training ground. So I've really enjoyed it. Everyone's been very welcoming. I've joked about, I had no idea what a Londoner would be like, what sort of welcome I would receive in Yorkshire, and I'm delighted to say that almost without exception, it's been very warm, very friendly, and I'm genuinely excited and delighted to have joined the club, firstly on an interim basis, and it's great that the chairman's asked me to stay on, and I'm delighted and really excited and privileged to be able to work with you and all the guys at the club, try and take us forward.
When you join a new club in this kind of role, how long does it take to fully understand the club operationally, the beliefs, the ethos? How long does that take?
I think it's important to come in with an open mind, not to come with preconceived ideas. And my approach has always been to give myself at least 3 months, 100 days to meet with everyone individually and as groups, to go through the numbers, to go through whatever strategy documents there are in place, and to really just get your feet under the ground to understand then a little bit more about the people, a little bit about the culture and the values of the club. And obviously, the chairman's been around for, getting on for a year, and he's got some values that he wanted to introduce. And I have to say that, I think the values are spot on for the kind of club that Huddersfield are. Very proud to represent the town, big part of the community, and hopefully we'll continue to be an even bigger part. We've got a fantastic foundation, great staff over there as well. So I like to give myself a little bit of time, at least 3 months to settle in before you start making assessments. And it's very, very important to come with no preconceived ideas, with some strong thoughts of your own, but give people a chance to talk about themselves, talk about what they do. You find out lots about the club by just talking to everyone individually and understanding the people within the club as well.
And what are your initial thoughts on Huddersfield Town, the way we run?
Oh, look, the club's done fantastically well over the past sort of 5-6 years under Dean's chairmanship. Wonderful to get promoted. What I found is a club that obviously the second year in the Premier League, it goes without saying, was tough, and there was undoubtedly a hangover at the club that went all the way through the club. It's funny, it's not just on the playing side that these things, and the fans, I'm sure, will understand, or at least hope they'll understand, that the hangover went right the way through the club. And the euphoria of staying up in year one was obviously right at the other end of the scale with relegation. And I think we've come out of that now. We've bounced, and then we've then been hit by this coronavirus. Just as things were beginning to turn, the playing performances were beginning to get a bit more consistent. I know Danny and Nicky are working hard to change the style of football and to be more consistent on the field, obviously to play more winning football. So yeah, I've found that the people really care about the club. Staff really care about the club, passionate about it. There's a lot of town fans within the organisation, which is a good thing. Doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be a town fan to work here, but clearly it helps. So no, I've found a club in transition, and we've got a lot of hard work to do. There was a huge task to do in terms of looking at the size of organisation we were, what our targets were, what our strategy was for the next 5 years, and how we were going to achieve that. and that's both the footballing strategy and obviously the way we operate as a business. And as you would expect, you found a lot of things that I think we can do a lot better on. But what I'm very, very pleased about is that the staff themselves seem very open to change. There's not been too much in the way of resistance.
And Huddersfield Town as a whole, obviously you've worked at other clubs in this role. How does Huddersfield Town differ and compare to those?
Well, there's the obvious size thing. I mean, Huddersfield is a big club. It's become a big club. Probably, I was going to use the word bloated, but Premier League does that to you, because you do grow really quickly, particularly on the football side, when you get into the Premier League. And I'm not always absolutely certain that it needs to grow to the size that clubs always think it does, but. So the size of Huddersfield was a pleasant surprise. It is a big organisation, fantastic stadium, but you know the stadium isn't our own, so that's we don't own the stadium, so that's a challenge, and that's a new challenge for me because I've never been at a club that didn't own its stadium and didn't have the right to do what it liked, to put on events and so forth and so forth. So all clubs operate in different ways. Brentford, you know, most recently in the UK was where I spent 7.5 years, and they would admit being one of the smallest clubs in the division, but consistently, you know, punching well above their weight because of the way they recruited players. Very different from, I think, the style that Huddersfield have adopted. But I think, you know, Huddersfield, one thing I will say is the people at the club had already begun to challenge themselves on the way we operated. And my job now is to work with them to improve the way we operate, to make us efficient, both in terms of the way we recruit players, the way we recruit staff. Have we got the right organisational structure? Have we got the right skill sets? Have we got the right people in every role? And my job now, and you know, one thing the coronavirus crisis has given us is time to look at what we do need. One, to get ourselves through this crisis, and obviously, you know, make sure the club comes out the other side. And obviously, it's helped in terms of planning for the future. But the future will be very different from the one that we were looking at back in February when we last had a home game against Charlton. When we come out of this, all clubs will be taking a very different position on what their club will look like, I imagine.
And since you started, there's been a lot of things going on at the club, the training ground renovation, for example, and now this. What have you been working on during this period and prior to help us get through this situation?
Well, obviously the training ground was ongoing, and there were lots of loose ends with the training ground, and it's nearly complete. We've got a little bit of work to do when the contractors can come back on site. There's still some finishing work to be done there, but it will be one of the best training complexes, I assure you, outside of the Premier League, and even, you know, compared to some of the clubs in the Premier League, Huddersfield will have a training facility that we'll be very proud of, and that remember that's really the place of work for players. It's not the stadium, but the stadium's a great stadium. But the place of work that we've provided for the players, the environment, and the skills that we've got down there are really excellent. So I've been working both on the football side, working with how we can make the training ground better and the structure of our football department. As I said earlier, it's kind of grown a little bit quickly and probably got a little bit out of control, if I'm honest with you, in terms of the size of the overall football department. So looking at how we can be better resourced and smarter in the way we operate there. And obviously I've been looking at how we can generate, away from football, how we can generate more revenue into the club, particularly when you don't, when you don't own the stadium. So we're going to be, you know, smarter in terms of our commercial output. Obviously, we're losing our commercial director in the next month or so. We're in the process of recruiting somebody to fill that role. But I can see there's a lot of opportunity for us to work even better with our partners with our commercial partners going forward, looking at our fan base, how we interact with our fan base, looking down to what you guys do in terms of delivering our social media output, our digital output, all the content that we come up with. And we've got to be incredibly smart at all of these. That's where the world is moving to. That's what fans are looking for. Predominantly, lot better in terms of social media output, digital output, and clubs just got to be very smart. So, been working right the way across the board, but obviously we've had now to use the time that we've got in this crisis to means that we've got to reshape the business. We've had to take, and I'm still working through those at the moment, some plans to reshape the business, because we potentially are looking at anywhere up to, maybe even the end of this year without really bringing in any revenue in terms of potentially playing football without fans in the stadium, which is going to be really difficult for the players, really takes away something from the sport, and actually can cost clubs money, because, as you know, we're still waiting for the absolute protocols to be told to us and explained to us what we will have to do to put games on behind closed doors, if that's indeed what we're asked to do. And some of the early stuff that I've seen is comes with a huge expense, because one thing we can't do is not open our doors again for players, staff and fans until it's absolutely safe to do so. I don't even think we should be contemplating that until we are absolutely certain that it doesn't represent a risk to anybody involved in the sport, particularly fans.
Yeah, and that nicely brings me on to my next point. And for you, obviously, there is a big need to plan for the future with this difficult current situation that we've got. How much harder has that made it for you to plan the future of the football club, short term and long term, in terms of the upcoming transfer window, finances, and then longer terms in terms of like the commercial deals, for example?
Well, I mean, we'd already started to work on a budget. We weren't far off having a budget ready to go into a new season and to get signed off by the shareholders. That's had to be completely reworked, and it's working on a number of scenarios. It was initially working on perhaps playing football again by June with crowds. Then that looks like it was never going to happen. Then it was June without crowds. Then it was maybe September. And now, as I say, some of the advice we're given is that we're unlikely to have crowds into the stadium much before December. Well, that takes away a huge amount of our revenue. So how do you continue to run a business? This is the challenge. How do you continue to run a business like a football club when there's no money coming in, but you've still got salaries to pay, you've still got costs to meet, and you want to make sure that this club, this institution that's been around for so long is fit enough and lean enough to come through the other side. So I've been working with the senior management team on what we need to do, what actions we need to take, and some of them are going to be, this is going to be a really tough 8-month period, but it's important that we all work really hard to meet the challenge, which I'm sure we will do, because we have got one thing I will say about the club is that we have some quality individuals in the organisation. The club is very lucky to have really good staff. They understand the serious nature of what we're facing, and we want to make sure that we do what we have to do to bring this club through this crisis. The word is completely overused these days, but it is completely unprecedented. You couldn't have budgeted for this. You can budget for highs and lows. What's really difficult to budget for is completely having your revenue streams dry up almost overnight. Fortunately, we've still got fans, and we're really grateful to them. There are still fans renewing season cards, even though they don't yet know. We can't yet tell them what that new season, when it's going to start, what it's going to look like. But I guess we'll cross that bridge. But that's what loyal football fans do. They do that because I'm going to support their football club, and Huddersfield have clearly got a lot of very loyal fans. They're still buying merchandise, so we've still got a little bit of money coming in. But as you could imagine, it's nothing compared to what the club needs to run properly. So that's a huge, as I say, it's a huge challenge. So what we're focusing on at the moment is the next kind of 6 to 8 months, what we need to do. Then what would happen if certain things, fall into place come early 2021? Hopefully fans will, we'll be able to have a full stadium. Will the government say we're restricted to only 50% capacity? We just don't know those. We just don't know those details yet. So we're working blind, where there's complete uncertainty. But despite that, I can assure everyone that we're all working really hard to pull the club through this really testing period, so that they've got a club still to support that's in good shape going into the next calendar year.
How often are the discussions or the information coming from the EFL, the advice that they give you?
Well, it has been we've been getting sort of a couple of updates every week, and the club, as myself and the finance director, have taken part in probably four or five conference calls with all involving all 24 clubs and people from the EFL as themselves. We've not had anything for the last week or so, but I suspect following the EFL's chairman's appearance today before the select committee, that we will have an update based on his conversation today and how that went. I think we've all been looking to see what Rick would say today, the kind of questions he'd been asked, and obviously the answers he would come up with. So, for instance, I'm reading today that Rick feels that we need to get the season concluded by the 31st of July. Now, that's the first time I've heard that. That could be a personal opinion. That could be something EFL are going to advise us about. Again, nobody knows. Without the medical guys and the governments, nobody knows whether that's even possible behind closed doors or not.
Yeah, and everyone's in the same boat. That we're all waiting for information on whether the season will return, what will happen with that campaign. Longer term, how do you see this situation affecting the face of football?
Well, I wouldn't be the first to say it, but I think football will miss a huge opportunity if it doesn't take a good chance to look at itself, look at the way its cost base operates, look at wages throughout the business. This is a huge wake-up call for us all, and I think we will find that the size of squads, player salaries, potentially salary caps, probably not for individuals, but maybe squad size, salary caps across a squad. I think there'll be lots of changes made to the way football operates, because clubs are going to come out of this very, very, very badly bruised, as is the rest of the UK economy, which could take anything up to 3 to 5 years to fully recover to pre-COVID days. So bear in mind that when fans are allowed back in, it just doesn't mean that everything is sorted out. We'll have had deferred payments to make good, both from government schemes and at some point with the players. We'll agree a wage deferral with the players, I'm sure. We've had some discussions with the players already, and they're trying to be as helpful as they can, I'm pleased to say. So we will have lots of catching up to do in terms of paying people that we put up for the time being. So it's going to take some time to come out the other end. So I think you'll find some common sense, some common business sense coming into the way football clubs are run. That it just can't continue the way, particularly in the Championship, where the losses racked up by the clubs in the Championship, all chasing the Premier League dream, are just purely and simply not sustainable. Remember, owners aren't just losing money at their football clubs. In most cases, their main business, which helps fund the football club, that's also suffering really badly in terms of this crisis. So they're having to recover their own businesses as well as the football club. So there's going to be a really soft period for 2 or 3 seasons going forward, at least, while clubs find their feet again and get some money back into the system. But I think we've hopefully seen an end to the days of wild overspending and speculation and clubs accumulating huge debt. I think that has to change, and a lot of that will be to the way we operate, ticket pricing. It will be the way the TV deal operates, the way TV monies are shared around the industry, because I do believe there should be no separation when it comes to this point between the Premier League and the EFL. We all need each other. The Premier League is nothing without the EFL, and we all want the dream of playing at the highest level and working in the highest level. So I think there'll be some recalculations there on how that works. We're in for a lot of change. I think it will change the face of football for good, and for good reason as well.
And just finally, you've already touched on this a little bit, but financially for Huddersfield Town, how do you think the club will be after this point? I know it's a little bit difficult to say with all the uncertainty, but how will the club be?
Well, we are managing our cash really, really, really carefully. That's I suspect every club is having to do that. We're having to look at everything we spend. The club will get through this, but we will hurt. And you can't go 7, 8, 9 months without revenue coming into a business, and still, the outflow at the other end without it not hurting. So we will hurt, but we will come through it. We'll be better for the experience. I think as individuals, it will challenge us all of us working at the football club, everyone who's having to look at the way they spend their lives. It's going to challenge us all, and it will challenge the football club. We'll come out of it the other end stronger, but we will be severely bruised. But we won't be alone. Most clubs will be in the same boat, if not all clubs. The transfer market, nobody knows what that will look like, how long that's going to be. We had certain plans. We'd budgeted to do certain things, incoming and outgoing during the normal transfer period. All of that now is up in the air. So it's changed everything about it. But there's no point bleating. It is what it is. It's more important that, at the end of the day, this is football we're talking about. And for you and I and for all the fans, of course, football and their football club is really important. But whilst we're still seeing the number of deaths every day that are being reported, and you're seeing what's happening with frontline workers and so forth, we have got to get a little bit of perspective to this.
Yeah, but absolutely.
The good news is that appears to be moving in the right direction, and hopefully we'll begin to see some certainty about the rest of this season, next season, going forward. So the club will come through it. We will still be around. We'll come through it successfully, and we'll all be stronger for it. But we will, along with most clubs, be bruised. But that will make us operate in a different way, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Thank you very much for giving up your incredibly valuable time, Mark, to catch up with us, and I hope you and your family stay safe.
Same to you, Adam. Take care now.